The New Deal's impact. Labor. This really brings us to the election of 1936. And this is when FDR is, for the first time, running for re-election. We'll get into later elections later. Basically, this is the election that Americans get to judge FDR and the New Deal. Is it enough? Do they like it? Well, conservatives, business people, and wealthy Americans generally were furious and are going to decry the New Deal, but really they're in the minority. In fact, the presidential candidate for the Republican Party, Governor Alf Landon of Kansas, endorsed most of the New Deal and just criticized some inefficiencies in the New Deal and the costs of some programs. The thing is, earlier critics from the left also had been undercut, and so at that point, their nomination, William LaMeek in the Union Party, is basically no longer a threat. So we really see an invincible coalition coming behind FDR. So let's look at all the different groups that were affected by the New Deal. So we have the agricultural programs are going to reinforce the traditional Democratic allegiance of like white Southerners, but actually all those agricultural programs are going to attract a lot of other farmers, especially like out in the West. With things like the Wagner Act, we're going to see labor is going to support FDR in this election. We see middle-class voters whose homes were saved and just hope was raised are going to join in behind FDR. We get urban ethnic groups are going to benefit from different like welfare programs, and they are going to appreciate the recognition FDR gave them. We're going to see like during FDR's time in office, he is actually going to establish the first Italian American to the federal judiciary. And he appoints about 5 times as many Catholics and Jewish people to government positions compared to previous presidents. Plus, this is the first election we see African Americans vote overwhelmingly Democratic. I'll explain why in a little bit, but a lot of it's from just by helping out everyone. African Americans were helped out as well. We also get a lot of women voting for FDR, and partly this is because like Eleanor Roosevelt attracted their support. And so you really see here a landslide, and you can see that in this picture. FDR is going to pull 61% of the popular vote and the largest electoral vote margin ever recorded in American history, which is 523 to 8. And the thing is, it's not just FDR who takes the presidency for re-election, but Democrats are going to have huge majorities in Congress as well. So how did the New Deal actually affect people? Well, looking at laborers, they had wanted to improve wages. They had wanted to improve their benefits. They had wanted to gain union recognition and gain some sort of control over the workplace. And this had provoked a lot of opposition from their employers up to this point. But with the second New Deal, you get a wave of labor activism because now the government is protecting these unions' rights. So like the AFL that we've seen before, the American Federation of Labor, they were unprepared for the rush of industrial workers that are all seeking to unionize. We're going to see a lot of progressive labor unions are going to see and establish basically industry-wide unions because they see them as more appropriate for like unskilled workers, especially in like mass production industries. In fact, within the AFL itself, there's going to be a committee set up, the Committee for Industrial Organizations, known as the CIO. And basically this is campaigning to unionize workers in like the steel and auto and rubber industries. But eventually the AFL is actually going to insist that CIO disband and actually would expel its unions in 1937. Eventually the CIO is going to be reorganized into a separate labor union group altogether known as the Congress of Industrial Organizations, keeping that same acronym. And basically, the CIO is going to put labor on march. Eventually, the CIO and the AFL actually combine back together as a kind of partnership later on, but don't worry about that too much. Basically, this is inspiring a lot of workers to unionize that had been previously neglected. And they're going to use all kinds of new and aggressive tactics to move against their employers and to go on strike. A big one at this time is going to be the sit-down strike, where workers would come inside and sit down inside the plant. And this basically blocked production and the use of strike breakers, because if you're picketing outside, strike breakers are hired to come in and work your jobs anyway, so it doesn't matter that, oh, you can picket all you want, somebody's already teaching still. But if you're sitting down in where you work, a strike breaker can't do your job because you're in the way. And so we see a lot of these labor unions going on strike win major victories despite facing bitter opposition. In fact, a lot of times the issue is not going to be wages, because wages are going to increase and everything, but labor's just right to organize and bargain collectively with management. In fact, when the Senate would investigate different labor unions going on strike and everything, they're going to find that a lot of companies had hired like private police to attack workers, or attack workers who were even just seeking to unionize. And like a lot of these employers did things like stockpile weapons and tear gas, and you get a lot of corrupt officials allowing this. And so the government's going to step in and stop it.